This week on Forward.
People think running for president, on the outside looking in, especially if you don't pay attention, they think it's like an ego exercise.
It's an ego crusher. It's an ego demolisher.
It is so grueling and so painful and so expensive from a time, talent, treasure standpoint, not just money.
People are burnt out, jaded. So it's hard to shake them and be like, yo, we really can do better than this.
But I hope Taylor finds love. If Taylor gets married and has babies, it will be one of the best baby booms in this country. That's probably my last prediction.
Yeah, whatever she names the baby will be the most popular baby name that year. Welcome, everyone, to 2024. The year that we've all heard so much about is here. And to bring us in right, we have our old friend for a predictions episode, campaign manager for Dean Phillips, Zach Graumann is here. Yay!
Is that my claim to fame now, man?
I mean, shit, you were my campaign manager. And so, you know, that you could actually do a more authoritative Yang Dean comparison. We could do one of those side-by-side charts.
After your campaign, I was like, I'm never touching politics again. I'm pretty sure I've come on this show and said, I'm never touching politics again. Andrew,
You're
and
back,
then
baby.
and
You're
then
back.
Dean wrote me back in. He's a good guy. He's the real deal.
So order of operations, we're going to review how we did in 2023. That'll be good fun. And then we'll start predicting for 2024. But I'm pumped you're working with Dean. I think that Joe Biden is an historically weak candidate. I think that he will lose to Trump in the general, and the Democratic Party owes us, at a minimum, a real competitive process. But what they actually owe us is the best possible candidate to defeat Trump, and Joe Biden ain't it. I mean, like that's just, you know, empirical. No. So thank you, Dean, and thank you, Zach, for making this stuff happen. New Hampshire votes January 23rd. And we can go into the predictions. But first, how did we do in 2023?
So 2023 was fun. That's what I listened to last night, just to recap. So a couple things off the front end. One, I owe you a boba tea because I had the over on 15 Republicans running. And I think that final number floated around probably exactly what you said, which was 12.
Nice.
We can confirm, but it certainly wasn't 15. So I owe you a boba tea. And actually what it should be is boba tea ice cream, which they have in the new Hudson Yards.
Jing Fu Tong. It's a Taiwanese joint, and it's delicious.
Boba tea, I like. Boba ice cream, I love. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Boba soft serve. Check it out.
It's ridiculous. It's like all the joy of boba tea, but in ice cream. It's wonderful. So a couple things. I'll recap our predictions. I will say this, though, Andrew. There were a couple where we really nailed. And I think we should have more listeners on this podcast because it was prescient. It was, there were a couple of things we really got spot on, and a couple of things, big swing and a miss, but a couple of the stuff that I think that was more our lane, we really did nail. So you predicted, here were your predictions. You predicted a mild recession. Depends how you define recession.
What I'd say, and this we can talk about in this episode. So I think that 2023 prediction just gets punted to 2024. As I feel like. So, you know, like for 2023, you'd say it's a miss. But, you know, like it could be something of a too soon call.
Yeah, I don't. Some of these things are tough because you look at recession from a technical definition, no. But if you look at, are people feeling better or worse about the economy on both sides of the aisle? Yes.
Yeah,
like, yes,
there'd be a lot of people that would say right now we're in a recession based upon their own lives by the stats. I think the stats I saw are that 72, 75, even 79% of Americans don't think the economy is going well.
Yeah, it's not great. And this is honestly what you ran on in 2020 on what we're measuring, GDP, stock market growth.
It's true.
These things are not really reflective in most of the country. They're good for us, frankly, for folks that are college educated and thriving in the economy in various ways. And I say that humbly, but they're not good for the average person, and even the above average person. It's really tough. I see it a lot. So I'll call that a milk, like lukewarm, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, if you're generous, lukewarm, I'll take it.
Yeah. The second one was where you nailed it. You said Biden will announce re-election. You said in Q2. I didn't confirm that, but I think it might have been Q2 or late Q1. Nailed that. The big one you nailed was the rise of the dissatisfied middle, independents and a third party sort of thing. And I think RFK is the
big emblem for that one. Yeah.
Yeah, you nailed that one because he didn't really exist as a national figure when we were talking about this. So nailed that. Zach launches a company, also true. You had a new book, also true. So
that's good fun.
Those are good. And then my predictions were the one I did nail was I predicted a heated up war between mainstream media and independent media with Elon Musk fueling it. And I think I nailed that one.
No, full credit on that, man.
Yeah. Well, that's I can brag on that one because I swung and a miss in the other two. I had DeSantis runs, which I got right, but I had that he wins a Republican nomination, and that's almost certainly not going to happen. My caveats were right. I did say, look, he's kind of a nerd, and that he's never been vetted on a presidential level, so that's the risk, which I did understand the risk. I just thought he would have been a more vibrant Trump, and the reality is that's not the case. Trump is still Trump, and he's not even close.
Yeah, you missed that he's shrimpy, unlikable, and can't simulate human interaction.
Yeah. We had said nerdy. You talked about him being Harvard Law. Like the reality is, like he's just retail politics still matter, which is a good thing for democracy.
Well, what's interesting, Zach, you saw him speak in the most favorable context, which was he was speaking to a favorable audience.
Yeah, good point.
So, you had a data point that would give a certain impression.
I saw him on a panel, which is usually it's like a 30 to 40% of what a real debate is. It's the other 60% is the hard part, to be fair, but you have to have some sort of floor to do that well. And he had it. But man, you're right. It was a big bust. Got that wrong. And the other one was that I thought there'd be a Web3 mainstream company, where I basically had moms and other folks using Web3 without knowing it. And that hasn't happened yet. My bias from being married to Carly Riley probably clouded that judgment. I still think that call is right, but it's not now. I'm too early.
Well, yeah, sometimes you get the time frame wrong. I'm
very bullish on that. Web3, I'm still I'm buying ETH all the time. I'm very, very, very bullish, but I don't have an answer. I don't have timing. So anyway, 1 for 3. I'll take it, man. I'll take it. And I think we also had a couple things on the election preview that's what I meant where we were really prescient, where you had said you weren't even predicting. You were just like, this is what's going to happen, was Joe Biden announces and the establishment Dems fall in line. And you predicted the ripple effects of that. And we're seeing it now. And it's very, very challenging and very, very frustrating. But you nailed that. And that's why I'm like, look, we need more listeners. And I'm just like, gee, like our listeners are growing, for the record. And you guys, we're grateful to you. But that call was spot on. And you made it on CNN, et cetera. But well done, man. We're living that.
Yeah. So I guess that we can lead off with our politics discussion. So conventional wisdom right now is it's going to be a Trump-Biden rematch in 2024. I think right now, if you looked at it, you would say that's still the more than 50% likely matchup. But people ask me all the time, it's like, hey, what do you think the odds are of something like Dean Phillips upsetting Joe? Well, let's look at the Republican primary first, because it's a little easier. So, voting is going to start in 2 weeks in Iowa. I think Trump, generally speaking, rolls through the Republican nomination. It's breaking in his favor. There are a couple of things that could happen that would make his path more difficult, but right now it's Trump. And it could be over pretty quick, honestly, because DeSantis is staking it all in Iowa. So if Iowa doesn't go his way, he's probably out. And then New Hampshire will be the end of Chris Christie, almost certainly. And then South Carolina will be Nikki Haley's either last stand or victory party. But that's pretty quick. It's going to be a fast calendar.
The question is, the only way I see him not rolling is if the Dems, or they do what the Dems did essentially in 2020, where the let's call it the anti-progressive, the anti-Bernie lane lines up behind a candidate, which they all, Pete, Amy, Kamala and whoever was left lined up behind Joe, right? And if the Republicans do the same thing where you have Christie and DeSantis and Vivek drop out and they all line up behind Haley, maybe, but I don't know if that's not a clean trade-off. Like if you like DeSantis, you might be a good chunk of them are probably still
Nikki Haley is the most viable anti-Trump contender. She's got momentum, she's got money. The best case scenario for her is that Chris Christie drops out immediately. The last poll has Nikki Haley at 29% in New Hampshire, Trump at 44%, and Chris Christie at 10%. And I'm going to suggest that virtually none of that Chris Christie 10 would go to Trump, because if you're a Christie fan, you're not a Trump fan. So let's say Nikki Haley gets the majority of that, and then you get some love from independents and the rest of it. It's conceivable that Nikki Haley pulls off an upset in New Hampshire, goes into South Carolina with momentum. It's her home state. She wins. And then the entire thing becomes a long, protracted affair. The best thing that can happen for Nikki Haley is that Chris Christie drops out before New Hampshire endorses her, and then she upsets him in New Hampshire. So for people who are trying to keep an eye on what's happening, that's the key state, in my opinion, New Hampshire. If Trump wins both Iowa and New Hampshire, then he's going to go into South Carolina, and it'd be very hard for Nikki to win there. Though if Nikki wins in South Carolina, the thing can go on for more and more states. The major variable in this is New Hampshire. And the variable there is whether Christie drops out. Something happened just yesterday that's very, very bad. I'll say this, and that Chris Christie got 10% in this New Hampshire poll and thus qualified for the CNN debate. If Chris Christie had missed that debate, then the odds of him dropping out would be higher.
Yeah. So it sounds like the Republicans are going to keep this interesting for us. Interesting.
Well, for like in my opinion, this thing could be a wrap by February. How are you going to get healthier this year? One way to do so is to have healthy, chef-crafted meals delivered to your door stress-free. What the heck am I talking about? Factor. Factor's 2-minute meals are your secret weapon to a healthier, happier you. I've been eating Factor for this last number of weeks, and wow, it's been a game changer. We're talking about delicious chicken taco bowl, spicy poblano beef, and every time I'm like, ooh, this is going to be tasty, and it is. Makes you feel good. It's cost efficient. It's flexible. No prep, no mess. You can't screw it up. Just poke a couple holes in it, heat it up, and it's fresh, never frozen. I gotta say, if you try Factor, you are going to be pumped. It's gonna make you healthier, happier, more productive in the new year. Head to factormeals.com/yang50 and use code YANG50 to get 50% off. That's code YANG50 at factormeals.com/yang50 to get 50% off. Factor! So on the other side of the coin, you are making it so that it's not just the Biden coronation. And the Biden coronation strikes me as total madness, honestly. The dude's at 37% approval. Monmouth just had him at 34% in a poll I just saw come out. Joe Biden even said in a press conference, 50 Democrats could beat Trump, which begs the question. It's like, why not let one of them run?
One of the 50.
Because if you have a generic Democrat, he or she beats Trump by 8, whereas you lose to him by 3 or 4. So that's like an 11, 12-point swing. That's pretty much the ball game.
So I'm going to be more cagey than I normally am on talking about the Dem race. And I was telling Andrew before the show is I try not to be a hypocrite most thing, but I've told my team on Dean Phillips' campaign, I'm like, look, no one talks to press unless you go through myself or the comm shop. And here I am talking to quote press on a podcast. I don't.
Am I the press?
but I say to them, like, the press is not your friend, and they're not. And it's not their job to be your friend. But that said, Andrew, you objectively are a friend, so it's a little different. Here's the big piece of this is and we talked about this honestly last year when we did these predictions. In that the Republican race in 2020, they just canceled the debates essentially, and no one cared. And the only people that did care was the Democrats being like, tisk, tisk, not good for democracy, but not many people really cared. And And now the Dems are doing the same thing, where there's no debates and no primary. And which, if you have a dominant incumbent, I at least see the logic. Whereas, like, what's the point, right? But you don't have a dominant incumbent right now, and so that's where it feels anti-democratic. And you're seeing that across the country in various states where they're just lining up, and they're like, Florida does not have a Democratic primary. If you live in Florida, you don't get to vote. If you're a Democrat, you don't get to vote. So that to me is dark. I think it's really dark not to have debates. I think even before Dean Phillips, Marianne Williamson was in double digits in certain states. That's a legit version of a challenger given approval numbers, et cetera, state of affairs. So that's really frustrating. I think my bold prediction is that Joe Biden's not the nominee this time around. I think that's my bold prediction. Whether I'm not going to talk whether it's my guy, and I have a lot of reasons to think it's my guy or it's someone else or something. But I think competition is going to sneak its way in here.
I will join you in this, Zach. I think there'll be another nominee on the Democratic ticket too.
Yeah, we're biased, of course.
Yeah, we're self-interested in the sense
but
that.
Come on, man! Like, we're going to sleepwalk. We're going to walk right in.
Yeah, in the sense that, like, I think that the country deserves a nominee who could beat Trump. I really like Dean Phillips and donated to him and am supporting him in various ways. But here's the thing that no one's talking about that I'd love to help make this case. You know, one reason why Joe's numbers are going down is that he's running again, and we can tell it's the wrong decision. And people are pissed. You know, like the thing that Joe had going for him is that he's like a good dude that loves the country. And in this case, loving the country means getting out of the way and letting someone else run. You know, like, do you love your job as president and the fact everyone has to listen to you, or do you love the country? And he's failing this test, and Americans are picking up on that. Now, the press isn't touching that narrative, but I'm with you. Bold prediction number one, shared by Andrew and Zach. The Democratic Party has a nominee that is not Joe Biden.
I hear this a lot, that a primary would hurt Joe or help Trump. And I think that's insane. I think that's an insane statement, ignoring our own bias and trying to be objective with that. I think that's, primaries end up with the strongest candidate after almost 100% of the time. There's some exceptions, but most of the time you do. The other thing is, you can love Ruth Bader Ginsburg and think she's been wonderful for this country and a powerhouse and a role model, et cetera, and also say at the same time, on the other hand, that she should have retired earlier so Barack Obama could have named her replacement. And she didn't do that. And it hurt women. These are fundamentally true statements. And so,
well, I mean, overstaying your welcome is a disease in American politics. You know, like people do it way too much.
Yeah.
One thing I appreciate about folks, who still had some time on the clock and were like, yeah, I'm out. It's like, oh, good. And by the way, who's very high on that list for me is Dean Phillips, because guy's not running for Congress again. And if he just hung out in Congress, I mean, those guys have essentially lifetime appointments.
Yeah, you need to admire with Dean I think, and we've talked about this before a lot, is that people think running for president on the outside looking in, especially if you don't pay attention, they think it's like an ego exercise, and it's
an ego crusher. It's an ego demolisher.
It is so grueling and so painful and so expensive from a time, talent, treasure standpoint, not just money. One of the hardest things to ever do. And certainly the two hardest things I've ever done are running with you and now running with Dean. It's really, really hard. That's not to be a wham. That's a gig. And what's the light at the end of the tunnel is you get to rule the free world. Right. But I do like that about our democracy. Like, you got to be ready for prime time. You got to be a certain level of a trailblazer and soldier to do it. Even if you have the easiest path ever, if you're Hillary Clinton and the stars line up for you, right?
Oh my
you have the whole party behind you. It's still hard.
Political prediction number 2. I think third party candidates break 10% in November. You've got RFK. You've
nationally
got
or in certain states.
Nationally, composite. Yeah. So you've got RFK. You've got Cornel West. You've got Jill Stein, and then there's the elephant in the non-room is does someone like Manchin run on No Labels? I mean, No Labels has bought this ballot access. Are they going to use it? But I think that the discontent now, this could change if we're right and you swap out Joe for Dean Phillips or someone like that. But at this point, I think you wind up with generational high in third-party voting in November.
Mm-hmm. The real question is who it pulls from. And I think there's progressives and populists that if they're running Joe Biden, they're really going to go to an independent or to Trump. And then if there's a strong Democratic candidate, I think an RFK or type actually pulls from Trump. I mean, whoever the moderate is, the generic Democrat would pull from Trump as well. So that's what's so frustrating. I think this whole thing is we have a general sense of what right looks like here. Like the populist platform in America, where it's affordable healthcare, affordable education, affordable housing, like a little bit of a bigger government for this 21st century, and not crazy, not insane, just a little bigger, like a little bit of raising the floor, a little bit of capitalism with the floor.
I mean, hell, in some cases,
very, very popular.
you don't have to spend money; you'd save money. I mean, look at the healthcare system.
Oh, healthcare,
like,
man! I've now done a lot of research on this. The business case for Medicare for all is ridiculously strong, and you made it a good amount in 2020. So
yeah, totally. In so many ways, I mean, the Dean Phillips campaign is a continuation of a lot of the things that we ran on. It's super fun. Like, people don't realize it, but he's for Medicare for all. He's for trying to make things affordable on every level.
He's for like like the measurements that like American scorecard type stuff Andrew talked about. He's for.
He's more of a like a
populist moderate. He's where most of the country is. No one, and now like my job is to get people to know him. And that's hard if there's one of the things we had in 2020, Andrew, we had an apparatus. We had debates. We had Colbert having the candidates on. We had the Washington Post, the New York Times, all these places do like candidate features. Like there was an apparatus.
Come on, man. Dean Phillips was on the Andrew Yang podcast. Done and done. I'm kidding. But
we need sound effects. Our awesome producer, Daniel, he can add sound effects.
Yes. But to your point, it's a different process. We urge everyone listening, most of you have already done this, but do go to dean24.com and check out what Dean's about. Do it for my guy, Zach. Zach is still a newlywed. Look at him, building a life, investing in a presidential candidate named Dean Phillips. Go check out dean24.com. Do it for Zach. Do it for our guy, Zach.
Thanks, guys.
Do it for the country. Do it for yourself. Do it for your family.
My brother's been joking that this campaign will help me write the sequel to my book, Longer Than Long Shot.
Long Shot 2.
Longest Shot.
Hey YouTube, thanks for watching. Please do hit like and subscribe and hit that bell if you want to be notified every time a new episode drops. Probably on Mondays, but hit that bell, and thank you. Next up, we have the economy. Then we're going to close with tech. So the economy, I mentioned this. I think that the mild recession I'd predicted for 23 happens in 24, which is, by the way, another reason I think having Joe Biden as the nominee is a disaster. Bidenomics doesn't hit now. It's not going to, all of a sudden, everyone's going to be like, oh, shoot, like Biden. I mean, that was malpractice, just naming the economy after Biden. That was dumb from day one. It's worse when people aren't loving it. There are just massive imbalances in the economy that are going to come to roost. I mean, the obvious ones are commercial real estate and urban centers. I mean, that stuff needs to get revalued. That's going to end up hitting the balance sheets of various local banks. Residential real estate, in my opinion, is right there too. That there's a ton of paralysis in the market where there are a bunch of folks being like, hey, I can't sell because I don't want to lower the price. And people are like, well, I can't buy at the price because I can't get a mortgage. People just got very used to mortgage rates that were sub 4%. Now mortgage rates are starting to come back down below 8%, but that still ends up doubling your monthly payment. There's so many young people I know who are like not even looking anymore. So I think that you're going to see a retrenchment in some places, even in terms of residential. Something that people don't recognize as much too is there's a problem in terms of startup valuations, where startups raised money in 2020 and 2021 at valuations that don't make much sense. I advise a company that just cut its valuation by 50% to get some new money in. And they're one of the lucky ones in that they actually got some money in.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a bunch of startups that are not getting money. I know a bunch of people in tech who have been laid off recently, and these were people I would never have given any thought to, like folks that are like very competent and accomplished and in their 40s, and then I just randomly hear it's like, hey, like I'm now at loose ends. I was working at this big tech company. So most people, and this is one of the things I said, is like, look, commercial real estate and entrepreneurship aren't normal jobs. They have effects in various ways. Commercial real estate will certainly have a big effect, like when it gets revalued. Residential affects a lot more people, but I think that there are still imbalances and shoes to drop, and when they do, there are going to be some economic repercussions that don't help people, even who aren't touching those industries. So I think the mild recession does come in 24.
So a couple numbers that are crazy. The biggest one to me is credit card debt. It's outrageous. A lot of people don't know their interest rates on credit cards. There's some numbers on that, but they're like 27, 30%. They'll kill you.
Well, you could throw the reinitiation of student loan payment into the mix. I saw a stat that said 40% of people didn't pay in October, and that might have been confusion, but some of it is probably can't afford to.
This is like the time of year every 4 years we get to try and reset the direction of the country, and we don't really get to do it right now, and that's frustrating. I would say this: if the economy's so good, why is my rent so damn high? You know what I mean? And like I'm a dink. I'm a dual income, no kids. If it's tight for me, come on, like it can't be great in the rest of the country, and I know that because I've spoken with people all over the country. So we have housing, education, healthcare driving everybody nuts, and if those don't get fixed, no one's going to feel the economy is good. It doesn't matter how good the stock market is. It doesn't matter about venture valuations. Like those things are the canary in the coal mine in some ways. They're warning signs. But
that's what I'm saying is they're the warning signs. They're the growth curve. And then if you smush the growth curve, eventually you start getting to the Main Street mom and pop, average consumer. But you're right. I've seen stats on delinquency and various things like auto delinquencies, credit card debt going up. Like there are a bunch of things that suggest that consumers are weakening. The student loan, like non-payment rate or confusion rate or whatever, you add it all up, and like to me that this stuff rolls over into a recession sometime in the next 12 months.
My prediction is I think we're going to see the combination of people staying at home a lot more and pops of civil unrest and protests. I don't know if they particularly turn violent, but pops of anger. And so what I mean by that is I'm seeing this in New Hampshire with political events, and I'm not even talking about ours. I'm talking about the Republican Party, where you just have students in these college events, or Vivek and Christie and Haley doing college events, and there's no students there. There's just nada. My brother's been evaluating a company in his world, and he's one of the things there's a lot of crazy data on the younger generations because Netflix and Hulu and entertainment and video games are so powerful and so entertaining. People are staying home a lot more, and then to get them off their ass, it needs to be like TikTokable, Instagrammable, in the sense it has to be this like life-altering experience that they shareable experience. And so brands are paying crazy money to be at these kind of festivals and concerts and experiences because the brand experience is really nice. Like event marketing is somewhat making it a weird comeback. So that's why I think this plays out outside of like various versions of the economy where people are at home most of the time. And I think angertainment, if you will, bubbles them up. And then as issues occur, whether it's Israel, Gaza, whether it's the economy, whether it's another George Floyd type tragedy, you see various pops of anger that are short-lived because they're going to go right back home. But I think we're going to see more and more of this. And you predicted this in your book, War on Normal People. But I think you predicted more like consistent violence and anger, and we saw that around George Floyd. But now I think you're going to see like at-home lazy to pops of anger back to at-home lazy. I could be wrong, but that's my sense.
You should coin a term for that, man.
Some would call it slacktivism, but it's like the lazy protest. It's like show up once for the gram, and then I'm back to Netflix. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting too how now the actors are back from their strike, but the media companies, holy cow! I don't know if people have been noticing the turmoil. I mean, even if you just say something like Disney's lost money, and you think like I thought Disney was this juggernaut. I mean, like Disney's having major challenges. Most of the major media companies are having big challenges. It's because streaming is a freaking terrible business. Like the only one that's made it work is Netflix. Everyone else is just losing money.
It's because the subscribers are fickle, and then content's expensive to make. Is that the challenge?
Yeah, and people will not sign up for more than a certain number of streamers. Like after you get to 2.
We looked at this, Andrew, where it was like like a lot of these how these are funded somewhat. If it's a public company and you can get a really good multiple on your subscribers, like that's where it gets good, right? So if you have 1 million people paying $10 a month, you can make that $1 billion. You can ramp that multiple up to be $1 billion company, and then you have equity and you can get cash to create great content. And that has to keep going. But if valuations are down, it's not really enough. The model gets worse, if you will, and you have to forward look. It takes years to make a good movie or TV show, et cetera, right?
Well, the tough part is we're really being conditioned, man. Like we're being conditioned, and you're seeing it with the failure of some movies at the box office. Like to get me to the box office, it's got to be like Barbenheimer or something.
Yeah.
If it's
Bill Simmons made that prediction a while back, by the way. He said the only reason to go to the movies. Bill Simmons, like the Ringer, he's a sports guy, but he does a lot of pop culture. And he said something interesting. He said the only reason to go to the box office is like your Marvels, where it's like the big, and that's, Marvel's been struggling, but theoretically the like mega it. And then he said culturally relevant movies. And when he said this is when The Social Network came out. It was like everybody had to see that. And I think that's still the case. And it's ruined. Like think about how many good movies, let's call it the 90s, that were just like shitty 90-minute like low budget stuff that are wonderful, right? Like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I love that movie. It's a good rom-com. I don't think that gets made today.
I was a very, very loyal theater goer. I even had the AMC Stubbs card and the whole thing. I'd get like free popcorn. But it's a harsher media environment. It's one reason why I'm actually grateful to everyone who tunes into the podcast. I was just at like an industry event, and apparently podcasts have gotten shelved right and left, and I was like, oh shoot, like we're actually doing fine, we're like growing, like so thank you.
Yeah, well, it's similar to the subscription thing. There's only so many pods you can listen to, right?
Yeah, totally. And so really grateful to people who think that this is worth it. Thank you. This podcast is sponsored by ExpressVPN. When you go to the bathroom, you always close the door behind you because you don't want random people seeing what you're doing. But when you go online, people sometimes can see what you're doing. I'm talking about those big tech companies and other folks who might not have your best interest at heart. That's why I use ExpressVPN, and you should too. This way, your data stays yours. It can't be sold and resold. When I use ExpressVPN, you just click one button, transports you to another server, and also give you access to fun content that might be available in another country. It's like you're a global traveler without ever leaving your home. Get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN free by going to expressvpn.com/yang. That's expressvpn.com/yang for 3 extra months free. expressvpn.com/yang. So this is a tech prediction that blends into some of the other stuff we're talking about. I think that 2024 ends up becoming the AI cycle where you have deepfake videos and audios down the stretch over the last several weeks that end up causing a lot of confusion and turmoil. You saw this, by the way. There was another country where like there was a last minute deep fake and it might have made the difference. I think it was Estonia. So you're going to see this be the AI cycle. All sorts of weird shit's going to come up in our social media feeds over the last 2-3 weeks, and that could be one of the defining elements. By the way, it's also going to make it so it's easier for folks to argue that there was fraud or something was rigged or stolen, because there's going to be a lot of AI generated confusion down the stretch of the fall.
So here's what the political tactic is. So you can't do deep fakes in a multi-state primary too often, because there is a good, and I'm happy for this, there's a healthy public backlash if you do it. And it's happened. I think DeSantis did one where it's not good and you have to apologize and you have to say that was wrong or I don't agree with that, right? But when you're talking about late in the game stuff or like winner take all, so it's the end of Super Tuesday or the national election, what will happen is some savvy political operative or company will create a deep fake video and run ads on it on TV or wherever it is, or deep fake phone calls, et cetera, that have their opponent doing something awful, something that you know, and you have this data, like it crosses a line that voters really, really don't like, right? And it's something like showing that a Republican is pro-choice instead of pro-life, like last minute, right? Something awful or something personal attacks, et cetera. And it happens last minute, so you can't really respond. It's right before election day. And then the election happens and people either stay home or vote a different way. And then in the aftermath, you'll find out usually, because it has to go to enough people for it to be public. But then the election happened, right? And so that's what's going to happen. The question is, do people tune it out? Are we used to this, et cetera? But to your point, it's the first one. It's the first time we're doing this, right? So you'll have folks my mom's age and others that are in the demographic voters, and they're seeing something that looks and feels very real. What are they going to do? I don't know. It doesn't look great. And so I agree with you. It's a powerful political AI prediction. My prediction on AI is that we have an AI. It's my similar prediction that I had Web3, and maybe I'll be wrong again, but AI gets mass adopted in some version. I think it's going to be a personal assistant. I think that's the first one, where like what Hey Siri is, where it's, hey, book me an appointment, write this email, get me a reso. I think it gets really good there. I could be wrong, but that's...
No, I think that's a good prediction. I just met with an entrepreneur who's working on an AI therapy bot, which, by the way, I think there's a lot of potential for.
There's some angles. What's crazy, Andrew, is that when we were running, you were talking about non-repetitive cognitive work. You're like cognitive or repetitive. And so non-repetitive cognitive work was the ones that we thought would be, quote unquote, safe. But now you're seeing like design and musicians and AI really kicking ass in some of those areas, as opposed to it sucks at writing somewhat. It can do basic writing, but like there's certain lanes where I thought creatives would stay strong and like anything repetitive would get rocked, and it's not as clear cut.
Yeah. The repetitive, non-repetitive stuff. I mean, so repetitive, you think it's rules based, like accounting, bookkeeping. The tough truth is that a lot of quote unquote creative work also is kind of repetitive and like follows rules. You just don't really, know them as clearly. But AI can produce art.
There's an AI logo generator that I've used, and it's objectively good. And here's the other thing: it does like the basic work. It gives me 100 concepts, 1,000 concepts, and then I can take that to massage it, right?
It's the same. Like I tell people, it's great at naming things. Where
great at naming.
Like, hey, name this thing, and then it'll give you 5-10 suggestions, and then you might not choose any of them, but you're going to end up springboarding off of one of the suggestions to the one you want.
You get an infinite brainstorm in minutes.
Of mental steps.
You know what I mean? Like, think about when you're trying to name something. You like Google synonyms, etc. It just give me 20 names for a healthcare policy, whatever you want to do, right? For a new company that does X. First of all, it's very exciting and very frightening, and everybody knows this. And I think that's why I like listening to you. I still listen to your podcast because you understand the.
Sorry, man. I mean, that's hysterical. Sorry.
Yeah, I listen. Yeah, I don't listen to everything. It's tough sometimes, but I try to do as many as you can. But you like the economy, humanity, political tripod of how AI is going to affect. That's the type of like leadership we need, and that's the type of like foresight we need. And very few people actually do it. And if they do it somewhat well, they'll never touch politics. It's like if you listen to the All In guys, I love them. They talk about politics. They never run. Like they'll just donate, and raise money.
It's good fun. And it's been fun getting behind Dean, in part because it makes me appreciate how clear-eyed and independent we can be. And in part because of folks who tune into the podcast or whatnot. I'm not dependent on the Democratic machine for anything in the way that just about everyone over there in both politics and media are. And so being able to call out things like, hey guys, Joe Biden's old and unpopular, there's a dumb idea, and then look around and know that other people are thinking the same thing and are unable to say it. I mean, it's the same thing when I was running for president on UBI. It's like, hey guys, we're going to automate the shit out of a lot of things. And then a lot of people are like, oh yeah, that's totally happening. but there was no incentive for anyone to say it. And the great thing about you and me, Zach, is we can do what we know is right. And there are enough people that still look at us and support us and say, okay, those guys are trying to do something good. Let me at least check it out. Let me see what they're up to. Let me see if I agree. Right now, the great hope for this country is, in my opinion, the Dean Phillips campaign to give us a choice to move on from Joe Biden. You are grinding on that every single day. To close out this convo, what are you seeing on the horizon for the campaign, for Dean Phillips, for the primary?
Someday, maybe at some point, I'll maybe do a little more inside baseball. But the reality is, no one's paying attention to this race, which means no one's paying attention to Dean Phillips or really Joe Biden, except you've probably heard polls suck, which is true. Polls are
yeah, they're terrible.
Not good. The goal is New Hampshire. New Hampshire
on January 23rd. Let's go.
January 23rd, and that should be a moment. And it's funny. I've talked to Dean about this, where he talks about when he said he created Talenti Gelato. There were two big ice cream players, and what happens when you have essentially two monopolies, where it's like one or the other, it becomes a race to the bottom. And so Talenti was able to find a healthy middle. At a high quality at a reasonable price, and kind of stand out in that world. And that's essentially what he's doing in politics right now, where you have two parties that are monopolies, right? You're either on the team or you're off. And if you're off, you're toxic. And people are saying things privately that they won't say publicly, which is insane. So he's, trying to offer an alternative. And so my vision is it's got to be real, got to be real. It's got to be, people need to feel like this has a real shot. And look, he's going to be on the ballot in more than 40 states, probably more than 45 states. That's enough to win. We got to wake the country up. We are, and this is tough. As a country, we're complacent right now. We hate the outcomes.
Dude, I'll say it. Like right now, people are burnt out, jaded, negative, checked out, so it's hard to shake them and be like, yo, we really can do better than this. Like we can want more, we can make changes, we can still have new leaders that care about us, that will put us ahead of their own, ambitions, that we are their ambitions. I mean, we still need these things. But like, and in many ways, what's funny, Zach, is like you and I ran this campaign in 2020. And I think a lot of people who followed us came away very, very deeply disillusioned with the nature of the machine. They were like, oh my gosh, like these guys don't play it straight at all. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then this cycle, it's even worse, where they're like, oh my gosh, this time they're not even pretending. But it's the same freaking challenges to overcome. Like it still has to be, we activate people. This time we get them to back Dean, vote for Dean on January 23rd in New Hampshire. And then it's game on, where everyone looks up and says, wait a minute, we don't need to just accept that it's going to be Joe. Who's this Dean fellow? And then they'll check him out. They'll find he's a great human being with a heart of gold. He's just a really, really good, genuine person who wants to do right by us. The fact that you're fighting to make it happen makes me proud of you. I'm doing everything I can to help too. I hope people listening to this will do the same. This podcast is sponsored by Helix Sleep.
It's a pretty short list of things you can do that are going to make you happier, healthier, more energetic, more productive every single day. You know what's on that list? Getting the right freaking mattress. And what's the right mattress for you? If you go to Helix Sleep, you take their personalized sleep quiz and they will send you one of 20 unique mattresses made for you and you alone. Well, not you and you alone, like 5% of people. Do the math. For a 100-night free trial, you can sleep on this thing for 3 months. It will keep you cool. Don't just take my word for it. My kids seek out this mattress in the house. It's the #1 rated mattress picked by GQ and Wired magazine. This mattress will actually make you happier, healthier, and more productive. Helix is offering 20% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/yang. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now.
So big predictions for 2024. Drum roll. We have the Democratic Party moves on from Joe Biden. Third parties get double digits in the election. The mild recession happens. AI goes mainstream in your life. AI ends up screwing up politics down the stretch in November. And we're going to close with, hey, go check out dean24.com. But also the most important things, who wins the Super Bowl? And are Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce still together at the end of 24? So go ahead, Zach.
So I predicted the Bills to win the Super Bowl last year, and then Damar Hamlin almost died, essentially technically died on the field, and it kind of rocked our team in a way I wasn't ready for. So I'm not going to predict the Bills, as though I think we might get hot. I think the Ravens, Niners, Ravens take it this year. I think they're the best team. We'll see. But, I mean, look, I'm rooting for the Bills. I think we are the best team when we play well, but we've been a little streaky this year. What do you think?
The Bills can go on a run, that they could be like...
Gotta get hot, baby. Don't let us get hot. Don't let them get hot.
Yeah, I think the Bills make the playoffs and make some noise, personally. The matchup that jumped to mind for me is the Ravens-Niners. I think I'd take the Niners. They seem like they've got that mojo this year, though I do really like Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, and I'd enjoy
Lamar's
that.
so fun to watch. And then Travis and Taylor. So I heard a rumor. Everybody hears rumors. It's Taylor Swift. It's gossip. But it was, someone told me that Carly had told me, she'd been reading some blogs, etc., that there's a fan theory that they've been dating for a while, and that the friendship bracelet that he brought up on his podcast and then meeting was like a very well calculated rollout to get the deserved PR around it, which honestly would make sense because it seemed like it accelerated so quickly. Like, she's with the family, like it was like 2 weeks in, she's like hanging with the mom and like that sort of thing. So I'm going to say they're together I think they have a really, I don't wish ill. I hope they're actually in love. My gut says it's going to be a very public breakup and we're going to get a really good album out of it. Maybe that's selfish. But I hope Taylor finds love. And I think, last thing I'll say, if Taylor gets married and has babies, it will be one of the best baby booms in this country. That's probably my last prediction. If that happens, we're going to have a baby boom in the United States, and that'll be good.
Yeah, whatever she names the baby will be the most popular baby name that year. I do think Taylor Swift could run for president and do very, very well and win. I mean, I publicly said, like, Taylor, because, you attend an Eras tour and you see that
she's clearly rational,
yeah, but also she's got the right personal qualities, in my opinion.
That's actually, you know what? That's what I'll say. I want to close with this, Andrew. Is that before I took the job with you, I talked to 3 or 4 of people who worked very closely with you from Venture for America or other businesses, and I believe you're known by the company you keep. And all of those people, and I asked them for I'm like, shit on him to me. I'm like, give me his worst, give me this, and they all. They swore by you. They loved you. They really did love you as humans, as a human being. And I had the same thing with Dean. Was one of the things that stood out to me was that his family and the people around him and his staffers from Minnesota and folks that have known him for years really do love him. And I think the press will say this and Twitter will say that and blah, 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 right? But at the end of the day, who really knows somebody is the people they spend the most time with. That's how you generally can tell if someone's a good human being. And I believe in my own experience too, is that Dean's a great human being and Andrew Yang's a great human being. And so I think that's what we need to be asking for and not splitting hairs over policies. Like, I don't know if we have good human beings in our leadership in this country right now. So like, we'll leave you with, when we ended in 2020, 2016, there were times you probably get really excited about a candidate, whether it was Andrew or Bernie or someone, and you felt hope. And then it goes away and you feel sad. And I do feel there's my glimmer of hope right now. And I'm clinging to it. You know what I mean?
Dean Phillips is a great human being. He gives me hope as well. You give us hope, Zach. People see in you the prince that you are. I'm so glad that my colleagues lied about me to you those months ago. Nice work, people.
They were good, man. Joe Guy, shout out Joe Guy. His name is Joseph R. Guy. He's the man. He was an old roommate of mine. That's how I met Andrew, technically, because he was working for VFA early on, and he gave me the whole shoot, and he's like, Andrew, I will take a bullet for Andrew Yang.
Oh, so nice. Joe Guy's a great guy.
Great guy.
Literally.
Great Mr. Guy.
But you're totally right. If the country knew what they had in Dean Phillips, he would win.
Yes,
because
for sure
he's a genuine guy, human. he's a genuine.
About you too. If everybody can meet you, if everybody can meet Dean, we'd win. But that's not the game. The game is one I got to play.
And in many ways, man, the game is trying to take who we are and filter it through a machine. And the machine wants to funhouse mirror Dean. It certainly, enjoyed occasionally funhouse mirroring me.
Yeah.
And so then so then you have a couple of ways of getting the word out, but that is a challenge. And I'm convinced the machine is crumbling. The machine's still quite strong and powerful. And what initiated my presidential campaign in many ways when I was in DC saying, hey guys, we're automating the jobs away. What are we going to do? And then one person said bullshit, another person said bullshit, another person said bullshit. And the fourth person said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. This is not a town of leaders. This is a town of followers. We're not going to do anything. And the only way we would do something is if you bring the wave crashing down our heads, and people remember that from the campaign.
Great line.
Still true today. It's not a town of leaders. It's a town of followers. Got to bring the wave crashing down their heads. And this time the wave is going to start on January 23rd in New Hampshire. Zach, thank you for taking time out of the busy campaign to spend some time with us to continue the tradition of New Year's predictions. We're going to see how many of them come true. And in some cases, we're going to work like mad to make them come true.
Hell yeah, man. Anyway, those of you listening, I love you. I love being on. Thanks for taking care of Andrew while I'm not here. Stay strong. Have a wonderful, happy holiday. Happy New Year. I guess it's airing on New Year's, right? So hope you had a happy holiday. Have a happy New Year. Let's make 2024 our best year yet. Let's do it.
2024, let's go. Thank you, Zach. See you out in the trail.
Yes, sir.